Hi. That's my calm version of getting your attention. I usually start off by, and everybody's like, wait, what happened? So I don't do product demos. Wait, I'm about to do a product demo. There's a reason I don't do product demos, because they never go perfect. And practice as you might, if you're a systems engineer perhaps in here, you can attest to the fact that you could do it 100 times in the lab, and then as soon as you're in front of a customer, poof, it fails. It fails somewhere.
That's why you do a PowerPoint.
Exactly. And so if it weren't for good friends asking me to do these, I would have not done them at all, because I stray away from such. So I'll start off by apologizing for the fact that I'm sure at some point everything's going to go sideways, because that's just the nature of products in general. The second, I'll apologize to all the competitors, because I'm pretty neutral here. I try to be, and so we got all the competitors in the room as well. So maybe they'll learn something about how to be competitive or something. But anyway, we're going to talk about Tamograph, which is owned by Tamosoft, and they're not quite as known in the market, I think, as your air magnets and your Ekahau's. A lot of their products are what you consider, I don't know what the best word to use is, but let's just use a very nice word like cost effective. They have a lot of features, they have in all their products, and they're very cost effective, and you'll see how cost effective shortly. Is it for everybody? Probably not. Neither is any product, right? There's a good fit for it in lots of places, and so we're going to go through that. So the first thing is, I asked them to, even though you get a free copy, and on your thumb drive, there's a copy and the license and all this good stuff. And by the way, as soon as you install it, run an update and get the latest, greatest, because they've already run a bug fix update, as I was told. I'm getting a little bit of feedback as well, guys. So, but I asked them what about your friends? I mean, you guys came to the conference and you got a copy. What about your friends, your coworkers, and so on? And they said, we can hook you up there. So if you know anybody who wants this, you can use this code. And of course, this presentation will be available. To give you an idea of cost effective, and I think this is very important, there are multiple site survey tools, whether you're talking about active, passive, predictive modeling, yeah. So tools in the market, and these guys, as you can see, if you're familiar with what the normal pricing, when I say normal, I mean, among the what I would call high-end established players in the market, they're generally around anywhere from $5 to $7 grand, give or take, with support and things like this. So cost effective is relative, but when you're talking about 20% of the price, that's a bit of a game changer. Again, it has its place. Its place is not everywhere. It's certain, and you'll see if it's for you or not in the demonstration, I hope. It does have integration for a spectrum analysis and such as that. And it's easy for me to, before we get that, it's easy for me to make the assertion that they have wider card support or radio support, driver support than anybody in the market. In fact, all of the competitors combined. They are driver happy. In fact, when you're messing with somebody else's stuff, you end up going to Tamosoft's website sometimes to learn about the drivers of the tool you're going to use in somebody else's product. That's how anal they are about these drivers. And so if you ever want to know anything about Wi-Fi drivers, they're the place to go. So it does, this particular tool, Tamograph, has a couple of versions, and I always go for the pro version. That's just me, but they have an annual license, and so on. But just the same, the pro version, it has active, passive, predictive, and the first question in a lot of you guys' minds is it as good as Air Magnet? Is it as good as Ekahau? As good as is relative. It's relative to cost, the features you need. If I were to compare Wi-Fi and say, is Ubiquity as good as Aruba? I could say yes in some cases. I could say no in some cases, right? Depends on what you're doing with it. And so I think that's the case here as well. I did want to mention, though, while I had the chance, is I've been doing a lot of wall measurements lately. And so why would I do that? Well, if you go back, predictive modeling is inherently inaccurate. It's just inherently marketing is what it is, in my opinion, because you really don't know what you have. You just think you have what you have, and you're relying on somebody to say, well, these are brick walls, or these are poured concrete or drywall. And even if they said, okay, it's drywall, is it double drywall? Does it have aluminum studs? And on and on. And so it's guesswork. And so in order for it not to be guesswork, in order for it to be I'll say very accurate to the point of, let's call it 80 or 90%, real 80 or 90%, never as good as on site doing a AP on a stick or a passive or active scan. But in order to make it reasonably accurate, you can measure walls. How do you measure walls? Well, we've been tinkering with that for a while now. And so a small battery, and you can buy any number of handheld small batteries. This one's 5,000 milliamp hours, it's Amazon, right? You can, any number of them there. And this little guy here I've been tinkering with for a while. This is an access point / router, 11AC, single spatial stream. You don't need multiple spatial streams. It's a signal source and nothing more, okay? Oh, you want to take a picture of that? Sure, absolutely. You're going to get the presentation, you know. But you can take it, you know. Oh, you want me over there?
Good Lord, can we have one conversation?
I'm going to chase him down the aisle and give him a hug. And so we need a signal source. And you know, I've tried using like the Link Sprinter, and it's 2.4 gig only. I need something for 5 gig because, as you might have heard, firsthand or secondhand, I'm not about 2.4 very much. So we design around 5. We're always, looking at 2.4 for interference and things like this, and how can we use it, and if we can use it. But I wanted something that was switchable. And as you can see, you have a switch. It takes 30 seconds or so to boot this thing up. It can be a DHCP server, and it is by default. There's features lacking in this little unit. But what I brought this up for is, this is not really part of the main presentation, but to say that when you're doing site surveys, this is a nice little tool, combined with either your laptop or software on your phone or what have you, to just measure loss in walls. Just be aware of that. It's pretty handy. So here's what we're going to discuss today, provided I can make them all work. They all do work, because I've been through them all, but the issue is it's product demos, so they never go right. And so just talking about the passive and active and predictive, it does all three. It won't look the same as you're used to if you're used to using other products, because it's simply different. Their GUI is a little bit different. There are left and right panels in this GUI that pop in and pop out, and I totally forget about them all the time because they're really kind of hidden. You go, wait, oh, that, yeah, I wonder if it's in there. Oh, there's everything. Everybody's used to going to the top menu and saying, is it under this, drop down, this one? And a lot of the stuff that they have is actually in a right pane or a left pane. And so, not all of it, but a lot of it. We're going to create a new project. We're going to do a basic passive, basic active. I'm not going to walk around among you and nothing like this, but I want to show you how it's done. They do have spectrum integration, and I found that this is a little difficult on a small screen, but it's not bad. And they work with MetaGeek on that, as do some of the other guys. And we're going to have some predictive modeling, a little bit of the analysis, and the ways you can slice and dice the data, which is very, very simplified, which is good. I mean, it's not simple as in not functional or missing features. It's fully functional. It's just they've made it easy. And then generating reports. So that's it for the introduction. Alrighty then, there, you heckler types. You will be getting hugs later. Extended hugs, uncomfortably extended hugs. Okay, so you say. Okay, so can you see this? Okay. So here's my challenge here. I'm used to walking back and forth in almost a preacher style, right? I've just got to move, and I can't because it's product demo. And so I'm stuck right here behind the podium. Okay. So the first thing, and let me know if it doesn't look right over there for some reason, because I can't see that very well. On the left side, you have the software is simply scanning for what it can see. And we can set what channels very easily. And over here on the right side, you have multiple panes, if you will. And these are your surveys, and we'll look at those in a second, what actually goes there. The properties of the adapter and such as that. And then, of course, all these options, more features that you won't find in the top menu, by the way. So, in most cases, okay? So, we can, let's see, I believe it's under properties and slide down to the bottom. Okay. So here we can, at any time, we can set the channels. And if we can do this by country and region and things like that as well. So if we set it to, for example, United States, it's going to turn off 12, 13, 14, and especially 14. And then we're going to be missing 120, 24, and 28, which I've asked them to re-enable because now we can use those under the new rules of April of 2014. So they're going to do that. And the scanner starts running by default and scanning these channels, but you can change these as you wish. Like any survey, you have to make the decision. We've heard arguments to both sides already. You have to make a decision on which channels you want to scan. Do you, by default, scan all of them? Or do you just say, I'm abandoning 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. If you're not planning to do anything in the DFS bands, maybe you don't want to scan those and so on. But you have to make that decision, whatever your preference is. My preference is to scan 1, 6, and 11. This is just personal preference, and I might change my mind if I hear a really solid argument to this case, but I typically just do 1, 6, and 11, and then on 5 gig, I do them all, because I'm trying to plan for 5 gig. I'm trying to design around it. So I want to know what's available. Okay. So let's walk through this a little bit. So the first step is simply a new project. It's no different than anybody else's software in this regard. So we'll just, a name. And like everybody else's software also, we get to decide on what type of environment. Now the reason you have all these drop downs is because they're simply presets. They're description of a preset, if you will. So if I just said medium attenuation, what this is going to give me, if you look at the guess range, is 16 feet, 8 on both sides of wherever you're walking, that it's going to accurately extrapolate it. And then you can tell it extrapolate beyond that guess range if you want to. And you don't have to do that, of course. But if you go back up and choose, let's say, indoor with high attenuation, you get 10 feet and so on. This is simply the accuracy that they're trying to calibrate to as they go. So I typically, medium environment. And of course, we're in the US, we're going with feet. And so the next step is in this project wizard, and this is this startup wizard, and you don't have to use this, but it comes up pretty quick. You can see on the bottom you have all these hints right in this area here. That just guides you to the next step. So let's say that I've got this thing configured properly after I turn on 120 and 24 and 28, because I just like to do that. And 250 is by default, and 200, I think 200 is the minimum. And most vendors have these types of options. Next, and load a floor plan image, same as always. None of this stuff is any different than anybody else. It's a very easy wizard to use, but it's very standardized. Next, and okay, so now we have a project. Guess what's next? Always calibration, every time. And guess what? It tells you, do a calibration. So you can start your calibration. You don't have to click on that. You can go up in the menu and do it. But this is pretty simple. Just find a long hallway. If you guys aren't familiar with doing this, go buy a laser. Just do it. Go buy a laser and shoot the longest hallway in the place. Relying on 3-foot doors for buildings that take up 20 acres is not a good calibration. Generally speaking, in one instance, I won't tell you who it is, but we were shooting 300+ foot hallways. There were some long hallways, and those make the map very accurate for scale. So in this particular one, I'm just making up 100. And we're calibrated. So piece of cake. That's the whole of setting up your floor plan and calibrating it. Pretty easy stuff. Now, of course, there's multiple types of surveys. And I've got, I don't want to take it out, but okay, I'll just tell you I have it. I've got a WiSpy DBX connected to one port, and I've got, I'm using the Edimax, which is one of your adapters, the white one with the little flip-up antenna. I'm using that one. Its drivers work really well, and I've had good luck with it. And so we can have integrated spectrum analysis with this. Now, you'll see how that looks. I'm not a huge fan of looking at the spectrum while I'm doing the survey. I would much rather not, because it takes up a significant piece of my display, but you are capturing the data, so you can go back and look at it. So when we start the survey, we get options depending on what cards we have. As you can see, we have, does this say spectrum? Yeah, good. So we have a spectrum survey option because it detects the WiSpy card from MetaGeek. Okay, it wouldn't be there. That option wouldn't be there if the card wasn't plugged in and recognized. So you can do passive with spectrum. The spectrum is going to be captured anyway. And whether you're doing just the spectrum, which is really nice that you can do just the spectrum. don't know if you guys read one of the blogs I wrote, but I did a spectrum analysis with another product, and we didn't have any type of floor plan mechanism, but this has it built in, which is really nice to be able to understand the spectrum as you walk around. And when you're not really doing a survey per se, you're doing a spectrum survey. So in this case, we'll just do a standard passive, and we'll go back shortly. So let's see, there we go. And now we're ready to start clicking on the map to do this. I mean, this is, anybody see anything out of the norm here so far? Oh, me? Yeah, I'm definitely out of the norm. That's a good observation. That's a good observation. Damn you, Alan. And no kidding. Virtual hugs. So, so you just start clicking, of course. Now, if you happen to be running down the hallway, or say you're on a what's that thing, Segway, and you start doing this, it's gonna, hey, look at that, you're going more than 5 miles an hour. Slow down, pal. Okay, it's telling you that as you're going. Now you may want to say, you know what, I don't want to see that. Don't show me that, and you can turn that off in the display. But by default, it's there. Okay. Okay, so let's stop this. And so now we have a path, if you guys are familiar with the competing products. And I don't like to throw names around in the middle of the product presentation, obviously. It's one of the reasons I don't do product presentations, because I like to throw names everywhere. So we have a footpath here. Now, that's where you go. This one threw me in the beginning. You go back over to the right pane, and you go to surveys, and guess what? You've got the floor plan office, which is the graphic. And then underneath that, you've got this particular footpath. Okay, if I did another one, I'll just close this have some real estate here. We'll start another path, and we're going to, on this particular footpath, we'll do the same thing. And we'll start over here just because. And it'll tell us, hey man, you're running a little too fast there, pal. Okay, and then we'll stop. And if you come back over here, you see, look at that, we've still got that, right? So pretty standard stuff. If we want to save this, we can save it with or without this particular data. This is what data we've just collected, but you don't have to save it if you don't want it. You can simply uncheck it and then save the project, okay? One of the things I was running into when learning this was the merging of surveys. A lot of times we'll create a document, and we'll have two different documents with, let's say, footpath and data over here and footpath and data over here, and now we've got to merge those documents into one. In this case, this software's case, the way it works is you create the document and you save it, and then you hand it to multiple people. Let's say that you had 2 people surveying a school, and it's a humongous school. Then you say you get floor 2, I get floor 1, and you can split this up and say, okay, I've already got everything calibrated and such. Here's your copy. Now you can run and do your thing, come back, and we can merge those footpaths together. Okay, but you can't have 2 project files and merge those together because the maps are seen as different maps. You have to have some calibration reference point, and the way that's done is by creating the file to begin with and then sharing the file with somebody else, okay? And you can use the import, there's an import utility, let's see, there we go. You can use the import utility to bring their project data into this one. So you start off, you create a project, you save it, you hand it out. Come back, you import their data, you're done, okay? And now you have everybody's in one, pretty quick and easy. Not intuitive when you've been using competing products that create projects separately and can merge all that stuff together. So just be aware of that. So if you want to do active, I've got all the adapters just kind of laying around here, but who cares? There we go. So if you want to do an active survey, you have to have a client that is connecting to the access point, obviously, as a client, moving data upstream, downstream, with whatever parameters you so choose. And then you have to have the adapter that's capturing this data, okay? Wow, this is either I weigh a lot, which is yes, or this thing is a little creaky. I mean, every step, pow! Okay, so we've got the adapter that we're going to use for the active portion of the survey. In other words, connecting to the access point, moving data back and forth. And then we need to choose, or we're going to get all SSIDs, or we're going to choose or all APs, any SSID, or we're going to choose a single one, or what have you. And it automatically knows which one we're using for survey, for the capturing of data, okay? And here we have, we can use just a ping, which is pretty easy, or do we want to use a throughput test utility? Now, Tamosoft has a throughput test utility that's free, has a server, has a client. This particular software has the client built into it. So if you just want to use their utility to test, a wired client, a wireless client, see what kind of throughput you're getting upstream, downstream, you can do that. You can load it on anything. But if you want to use it as part of the surveying process, then you load the server software, which is just a little Windows executable. And let's see, do they have the Mac? Yeah, I think they do actually. They have the Mac version as well of both. And so I typically load it on just a PC somewhere, plug it into the wire, and that becomes my server. I need to know the IP address. I need to make sure the firewall's down on that box if it's a desktop PC. And then I point this one at it, like IP address and port, and it comes up by default. Everything is already pre-configured on the port. And so then you get to decide TCP or UDP, what do I want to move, and then you can configure those in the right panel. You can even mark it with QoS, which is kind of slick. So if I want to, let's say I want to use this utility, not that I have it installed anywhere, but let's say that I do, then let's see. Actually, it's not even capturing, what am I doing here? Oh, it's not on. I've got it on a little extension because I'm running out of ports here. Okay, hang on. That's good, and let me pull this out so that it doesn't do this. It was giving me a little error there, active, there we go. Okay, that should actually come up with the SSID. That's odd. All right. We good? Still not coming up. So this actually should be capturing the SSIDs. It did not. No. I could pull it in and start everything over, but you know how this goes, right? So so anyway, we point it toward the utility, which is wherever, and then we hit verify and start. And it simply takes about 2 seconds, 1 or 2 seconds, goes and connects that utility. And what you want to look at as far as the configuration here is options. Let's see. Nope. 1 second. That's not it. It is this one right here. Okay, right here, we've got some presets. So let's say that we wanted to test voice grade, we could, and you can see how the presets look on the requirements. This requirements is for testing, so for active surveying. So if I'm going to decide on what signal level is required and so forth, this is where it's going to be. What's my minimum phi rate, what channel widths are required, and so on. You can set all those things right here, uplink, downlink, etc. Okay, and that's what it'll actually run through the test of. It's ramping it up and ramping it down and so on. Okay. Now, well, there we go.
Keep names out of the mix here, I'll just say I'm a user of product X.
Yep.
And one of the things I always struggle with is product X has adapter calibration.
Yeah.
Which I find, depending on what environment I'm in, I'm always having to change the calibration. I didn't see you do anything like that with this product.
That's right. And because you guys know I'm a little bit on the assertive side, as in I speak my mind about that, calibration is stupid. It's ridiculous. It's meaningless. My profession before I got into IT was calibration. Imagine that. So I did that in the Army for 4 years. I did it for another couple of years as a civilian, as a normal person, I guess. And so working in calibration labs, that's how I learned RF. Whether it was spectrum analyzers or signal generators or power meters. I was stuck in RF labs for 4 straight years. And the thing about calibration is it always starts at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. And every piece of equipment that is calibrated is traceable to NIST. So let's say that I had something like a Wi-Fi card. And if I want to say that thing is calibrated plus or minus 3 dB of accuracy, it'll come with a test report that'll show me that it's traceable to NIST and what it was calibrated, the calibration period, for example, what its tolerances are by the manufacturers and whether it met them or not, and so on. So you can take a batch of, and Keith and I were ironically having this conversation last night, you can take a batch of adapters from any manufacturer you want to, and you start checking their output, their sensitivity, those things. It's all over the map, plus or minus 2 or 3 or something dB, And so to say, I'm going to calibrate this adapter to be standardized to what? None of them are calibrated anyway. And the way this process is typically done is what you call relative calibration, and that's completely bogus. It means we're going to say, let's test this one against this one. Manufacturer A against B, and then A against C, and A against D, and then we'll go back B against C, and we try to find some normality. Problem is, all the adapters are different all the time, so there is no such thing as normality, even trying to be relative in this way. So calibration in total is BS, straight up. Don't do it, don't worry about it. You don't need it, ever. Not with any manufacturer.
But what if you get into it, and I probably don't need that. What if you get into an environment? But what if you get into an environment where, what I usually do if I'm in a Cisco environment is I go in and I look at the controller, I do an active association to an AP, go into the controller, look at what the RSSI is that the controller is reporting that adapter, and I do it for both 2, 4, and 5 gig because I do dual surveys.
Right.
And then I calibrate the adapter to match those numbers. If I don't do that, then it's sometimes I have to put on 5 dB of attenuations. In some cases, I've had to actually add subtract attenuation from an adapter because it's reading too hot. If I don't do that calibration, then I'm going to come up with a survey, and usually it's a post-install survey that's going to show me that my environment has a lot more RF in it than what's really there, and I could be missing coverage holes. So how do you get around not calibrating in that case? I mean, I don't agree with you. And I don't like doing it because it actually keeps me up at night because you never know if you're right or wrong. But you've got to have some kind of a gut check, and the only thing I can do is the controller. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or not.
The gut check, the problem with the gut check is there's no point of reference. And that's what calibration is about. It's having a standard. You calibrate to standards, you don't calibrate relative. The problem that the process you just described is the AP's involved. And so the AP hasn't been calibrated either. How would I know this? I worked at 2 manufacturers, and I was involved in that process. And I asked them about calibration. Don't we calibrate these radios when they manufacture them? They're like, dude, really? Okay, so we manufacture these radios by the hundreds of thousands at a time. I mean, it's just as fast as they can make them. If they had to calibrate each one, this would take, we'll call it an hour to 2 hours. If you had an army of people doing it, you couldn't do it. Because every radio has to be checked. Is it within manufacturer specs? What are the manufacturer specs? In the radio's case, it's probably plus or minus about 10 dBs. You're like, what, 10 dBs? That's 99%. Yes, that's right. And so, in trying to get some relative measurement like that, like checking the controller and see what it hears, you've got one unknown bounced against another unknown. Take a different client, you got unknown against a different unknown. And move to another AP, you got a different unknown there against this unknown and that one. It's an impossibly ridiculous process. Even though it sounds good and it feels good, it's wrong. And I know it does. I mean, I'm the first guy in the world who wanted to calibrate. That's what I've made a living doing that. And so I got into this and started poking at that, and it just went nowhere because nobody calibrates anything ever. And so any calibration of the software is there to make you feel good, but it's bogus. It's truly bogus.
So what you're saying is that I should quit using product X.
No, I'm saying that process is, while it might make you feel a little bit better, it's not doing anything for you really.
But why do they have it in there?
Yeah, that is the good question. And their process has been that our stuff can simulate a Vocera badge. It can simulate an iPhone. It can't because the iPhone's not calibrated either, and neither is the Vocera badge. And so you could make 100 Vocera badges, and they'd all be different. So how is it that you can suddenly make yours like one of those? They're all 100 of them are different. You see, it makes you feel good. And it was a good thought from a product manager, but it ain't real.
It doesn't make me feel good. It
gives
me ulcers.
Well, now that somebody says, hey, you've been in the Matrix, sorry, you got to take the red pill. That's where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good point. Okay.
How about calibrating against, say, my spectrum analyzer that I've just spent many hundreds of dollars sending away for calibration?
Wait, say that. I'm sorry.
What about calibrating it against my spectrum analyzer that I've sent away and had spent many hundreds of dollars being calibrated?
Yeah, and sometimes that could be thousands of dollars. And so the answer to that is if I can get this done right, my adapter decided to quit because it was in a hub. Hang on a second here, get this cranking. So the only way to calibrate the scenario that you just described is to take the card apart. There we go, maybe it'll do it now. So you take the card apart and you're going to connect the wire on the antenna, basically the input to the antennas on that thing, wire that in directly into the spectrum analyzer, okay? And you have to know the loss, coming out, or what the output power is supposed to be, plus or minus tolerances, et cetera. So let's say you plug that in a spectrum analyzer with a cable or test leads or something. But when you're talking about 2.5 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, test leads won't do you. You need a standardized connector that has a range of frequency, spectrum range, that's the best way to say that, and frequency response is probably the right term. And generally speaking, if you take, and let's say solder's not going to work because that's got to have right frequency response. So there's got to be some kind of adapter made by the manufacturer that can adapt it to a cable. You got to know the loss of the cable. Then you got to know the loss of whatever input to the spectrum analyzer, so on and so forth. So let's say you do that, and you know all that data, and you say the manufacturer says plus or minus 10 dBs. Okay, great. So you do that, do the test report. Then you pull it off, and you got to put the antennas on it, because it's a wireless card, right? So you put the antennas on it, and okay, the antennas aren't calibrated. So the manufacturer says, well, these are 2.15 dBi antennas. Sure they are. So now you got to go test those, right? Because you now brought those into the equation. So suppose that you did that, okay? And you got this card that is freaking calibrated, and now instead of $25, it's now worth $2,000. And so, because you've gone through this process, and now you connect it to an AP. Uh-oh, we got to do it to the AP now. And now that becomes a $10,000 AP. And on it goes. If everything isn't calibrated, nothing's calibrated. It has to be a system. And that's why you cable everything in the calibration world, because you have to know the loss and the frequency response of the cables and so on, and the connectors and everything. Hence the whole CWNA thing. Guess where a lot of that came from? Yep. So thanks, Mike. Okay. My spectrum adapter's back. I guess it didn't like my little $4 hub. See, the problem, Ben said it really well earlier. He said that in making these laptops smaller and smaller and smaller, they make us carry more and more and more stuff. And that's the problem. I've got 2 ports, and both of them are I've got an adapter going to the display, and I got an adapter going to power, and I can't get my stuff in there. I got hubs hanging off of it. Okay, let's see. Oh well, still having the same issue there. Okay, and it's still not getting it. Well, that always happens. That's why I don't do product demos. So the next thing is, I've got a kind of a list here, and I was going to show you spectrum integration. Maybe I still will, if I can get it to, there we go. So one of the neat things here is the display is quite user-friendly, as you can see. And you can click on the display, or right-click on the display, and you can set it for dual band, right? You can set it for just the bands that matter. Did I say that? You can set it to look at the band that's crap, and it actually does quite a nice display. It fills in a little bit slowly, and then you've got some options here. You can do it by channel or frequency. I always use channel myself. And then you can say how big and you can have a waterfall. Let's say that we're going to set it as half the size of the window. So it's got a waterfall display and a real-time display. And I've got the MetaGeek adapter plugged in, as you might imagine. And so the problem that I run into in any product trying to look at spectrum analysis is simply real estate on the display. I don't want a 14 or 15-inch laptop doing a survey, right? That's just, it's already hard enough on your feet and your back when you're trying to carry around an 11-inch MacBook Air, but I'm not carrying anything bigger than that. So what I typically do in this case is I simply turn off the waterfall unless I need to see it, right? And you can make it as big or small as you want there. And you can detach the window as well. Great, it did that earlier. You see where that? Because and the reason for it's not the software, it works fine. It's the display thing. So I'll have to close this, and I'll show you how we'll fix that. So when you detach it with this screen attached, sometimes it's not happy with that. It's probably the fact that I'm boot camping a MacBook Air. So we'll detach it here. There we go. See, now it works. So I can move it wherever I want to on the display to get it out of my way. My issue is it's in the way anyway. So I'll pull it up when I need it. Okay. So we can very quickly, again, see, make another. I've gone through this little process so many times it's getting to be almost a habit. And next, and load an image, and poof, and next, calibrate. If only it was this fast in the real world, right? Okay. All right, poof. So let's say we want to do, let's see if it comes up this time. It keeps giving me that weird error. Distorted due to proximity of your adapters. Huh, look at that. I guess they're sitting a little close, and it's still not coming up. So the next thing was predictive modeling. I said modeling, didn't I? Okay, so one of the things that I found a little unintuitive about this, it's fine, it's just, I wasn't used to it, is, let's see, view and virtual objects. So virtual objects here is terminology for all of the stuff you need to do a predictive model, okay? So it's turned on right now, and the reason you know it's turned on is this row right here. That's what those are. So let's suppose that I wanted to set a brick wall. This is going to be a brick wall from here to here, okay? And maybe this one as well. Okay. Standard stuff, right? And maybe I want to move it. So my little pointer, and I drag it over a little bit. Okay, it's a little better aligned there, and move it down there. Okay, so that's pretty standard stuff. And let's say that I want to modify. This is a big one for me, is modifying these walls, because presets are great and all, but presets are rarely reality, and especially if you're out measuring walls. If I'm in a facility where you've got double cinder block and there's poured concrete between it, and then there's wall lockers on the outside of it, and you're like a 65 dB drop, show me one of those in here. So you can create that. You can just say like Wi-Fi hell, and then and make your own, and a color that should be like flaming red or something, and okay, and so you can modify those, and once you modify it, let's say that we're modifying this one just for giggles, you can hit save and you can save that one. Now what I did ask them for last week, I said, hey, what if I were to screw up all the presets, like all of them, and I said I just want them to kind of snap back. And they said, oh, we can do that. That's easy. That's a button. So that's a handy little thing that can undo all of your tinkering, if you will. Yes, whatever. Okay, if you want to delete those, there's a couple of ways to delete a wall. You can say undo the last point, or you can simply get your pointer and select it and hit delete. It's that simple, right? So as you can see, this is kind of I would call it kind of a mid-market level tool. It's not for the most sophisticated thing in the whole world, but it's probably 80% of, in my humble opinion, for about 20% of the price. So that kind of value is really good for people like individual consultants who are using their having to buy their own stuff, and big fancy companies not buying anything. That's always helpful. You can put APs on the map as well. So let's say that I wanted to go with just a standard 5 gig AC. And we'll just put it right there, okay? Mouse over it, and you can see what it's configured for, but if you don't like that, of course, I don't know if I can select it. Pointer, Devin. There we go. Select your pointer and do properties. And remember, it was 5 gig only, so the 2.4 is turned off. 5 gig, and you can set all the different parameters of this. Now, call me crazy, but this brother is not going to go through 1,000 APs individually setting them like this. This is really nice for a smaller scenario, but of course you don't have to do this. It's not required. This is just for some predictive stuff. But Lord, if you're trying to manually do stuff with this, that would take. If you had all these features to configure, holy moly! You can do exactly the same stuff in the more, I'll call it enterprise class products. But I don't use it in those features or those products either. This is not my favorite thing, but it is very sophisticated, as you can see. If I wanted to say 40 megahertz, you can see now I've only got pairs over here. If I want to do 20, then I have just the channel numbers and so on. They've got an amazing array of antennas in here, and it's just getting to be more and more. They add antennas just like they add drivers. It's ridiculous. So I've always thought that's good. So you can just pick a vendor, you can see just how many they have, and it's growing. So,
they have Excel ticks?
I'm sorry, Excel ticks? You know what? I don't think so. It literally takes nothing more than an email to get that kind of stuff done, and it's not we're not talking about months, we're talking about days. These guys move it. They get it done quickly. So that part I like a lot. So let's say that I wanted to create this AP, so it's out there. Look on the left side. So the AP that I have here is now listed among the APs that it can hear, okay? And if I want to delete it, I want to change its properties, I can do it over here just like I can do it on the map itself, okay? Now, had I done a walkabout, a passive walkabout, and gathered data, then the ones that it gathered sufficient data on, it can try to, just like all the software can, extrapolate where those APs are. And you can drag them, it's not really actually right there, it's more right here. And so you can certainly do that. Of course, you need to actually be able to do the walkabout for it to have that data. And it will know, let's say that if you're talking about this particular ruckus AP right here, it would know where it heard this approximately, and it would try to put that on the map accurately. And then you just go back and...
Like walls, you can actually also define APs.
Yes, that's correct.
You can define custom APs, and I've
That's
done
correct.
that myself in the software, and it's very,
Yeah, so-
very useful.
Yes.
Because then
and-
you can kind of match up kind of generic, and if you have an AP that's not listed in there, you can kind of list, a kind of a close generic kind of pattern.
That's right.
Right, with, hey, this is a 3-stream, and this other one's a 2-stream, and you can
Yeah.
kind of create your own presets.
Yes, and you can mix and match your predictive with your passive. So if you say, "Ooh, my passive shows I have a hole there," and you go, "I want an AP like this with 2 streams there. What's that going to look like with 40 megahertz wide channel on channel 56, plus or what have you?" You see the point there? So you can pull those together into one map, which is very nice. It's a little more difficult with some other products. There's a lot of usability or simplified usability in this product that I like because it's meant to be learned fast by a mid-market admin / surveyor, right? So it's always good. Okay, and when you're messing with APs, you can put it on the selected APs or all APs. When you want to, let's say, auto place, if you wanted to auto place them after a passive survey, you select the ones you want to auto place, put it on selected APs, and then tell it to do it. Okay, so then the visualization. Let's say that let's kill some of this stuff off and then do the visualization. Delete. There we go. I'm even going to delete this wall just for fun. Okay, so we're going to do a little passive. Actually, I want to take out the spectrum card for this one. Okay, and passive, and we just start cranking through it, right? Running down the hallways, screaming, naked. Build's on fire. How many of you guys have done surveys in the middle of the day? Done surveys in the middle of the day at schools where they continually ask you, "What are you guys doing?" And you make it into a game to see just how many scenarios you can think up on the fly. It's like we're looking for ghosts, and the next one is we're checking for radon gas, and it's always a game, right? And I've actually had a scenario where a teacher was making up better stuff than I was, and I was like, "Wow, that was great! I'm using that in the next classroom." And, I had one scenario where they were doing standardized testing, and it was a spelling test at a grammar school, and I'm walking over children, like this that are trying to grab my legs, and I'm trying to survey, and so. So I walk in this room, and they said, "Okay, kids, let's spell the word up." I was like, boy, wow, this must be first grade. And so I walked to the next room. It was a kind of a cluster of rooms. I walked to the next room. As I walk in the door, not kidding, the teacher goes, "Okay, kids, let's spell the word up." I said, "Wow, what's the chance of that, right?" I go to the third room. "Okay, kids, let's spell the word up." And I went, "Oh, that was odd." And I went to the fourth, and I'm walking in the door going, I know, let's spell the word." And she goes, "Up." And I was like, holy crap. And I said, somebody's talking to me about something. And so that was odd. And so was the trying to break dance over children. So let's stop the survey. Let's visualize. Like, for example, okay, so you do not have any APs selected. Let's go with the all APs. Yes. And I don't know. Let's just check them all. Yep, signal level. Why is it not doing it? You know what? This is a little strange. Let's see if it's going to recalculate. No, it doesn't. Why not? Oh, this is the best part of the whole thing. Come on, where's the love? That's why I don't do these things. There we go. Well, I guess my computer's a little slow. Let's go back to signal level. Oh, we don't have any. That'd be why. Okay. Let's do another little bit of a walkabout. My adapter's on. The other part of the building will be better. Sure it will. Make me out to be a moron. Yeah. So there's a lot of visualization here that just from the drop down. Now, some of them, if you'll notice, are passive, only apply to passive, and some only apply to active. So if you're looking at like round trip time or did it meet the criteria for UDP upstream, got 10 minutes, okay, or TCP downstream, or both, all those parameters that you set in the right menu, over here in the, requirements, yep. In the requirements, if you set all these thresholds, then it will show you visually whether you met them or not. And this little color code bar across the bottom, is labeled with data rates and throughputs and those kind of things, not just signal levels. Depends on what you're selecting. So since I just did passive, if I want to, say channel bandwidth and so on, you can see it's looking at all the different PHYs that it's capturing and so on. Okay. Let's see, generating reports. Yes, settings, come on, where's it at? I forget where half the stuff's at. Generate report, that might be it. Okay, so we've done two foot pass. If we want to generate a report for both of them, we simply check both of them and decide on what's going to be in there, as you can see here. And there's a lot of options here. And then you can send it to, save it, print it to a PDF or what have you. Save. And there's PDF, and I'll just drop it on the desktop. Look at that. Go, go, go. Gadget report. So, can you export the data to XML? Export to XML. I don't know. That's a good question. So anyway, it's generating a report. So we have, I'm almost to the end of my time. So we have active, we have passive, we have predictive, we have ease of usability. We have about 20% of the cost of most manufacturers. It can generate reports. It can do indoor, outdoor, with GPS and so on, depending on the version that you buy. So I would call it, in my opinion, it's probably 80% of what you'd expect on features with 20% of the price. Chris?
With the spectrum analysis, when you're capturing that. With the spectrum analysis, when you're capturing that as you're walking around, do you have any way of tracking exactly where the spectrum analysis was caught?
Yes, that's right. You do. And so I was going to scan through this. So here you can see it's got all the graphs. It explains what it is. It's standard reporting. All the others do the pretty much the same. It's very user friendly. It's automatically generated. So Chris's question was, with spectrum analysis, do you know where what the spectrum looks like wherever you were? Is that the right question? Yes. So it's being captured and it's being noted as part of the footpath. So when you mouse over the footpath, the spectrum will show you what it looks like at that specific location. And if your mouse is off the footpath, then it's still capturing in real time. Even if you stopped, it's just sitting there, basically spinning idle. But once you're capturing, it's being collected with the survey data at the footpath points, at the collection points. So to show you, not that my spectrum adapter is wanting to act nice, but we'll see. Okay. Okay. And so stop. And here, let's turn on spectrum. View spectrum. There it is. See, my mouse is off of it, and you're just sitting there watching, real time what it's capturing for whatever band you're on. So I've got this on 2.4 right now. But if I click here, you can see that any point in this footpath, what the spectrum looks like, and it's on these points. Okay. So as I mouse over this, come on, catch up. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Waterfall, like this. If I click here, that's what it looked like. Granted, I was going click, 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 so I didn't have time for the waterfall to get.
A few things on the spectrum analysis side.
If you have a question, don't ask it for about first 2 minutes, and then go ahead.
So I believe that it exports a WSX file for those of you who have Channelizer. It'll open up that if you want to play back the spectrum capture.
Separate from the project file?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I think it's under the file menu. And then
Yeah, I've never tried to do it.
because part of the problem when you're walking around, it's kind of like having a long exposure on a picture camera turned on. Everything kind of gets blurred because the time frame is a little bit longer. So it's kind of nice to be able to open it up in your Channelizer software and look at it that way.
Okay, I didn't know it did that. I hadn't seen that. Okay, so any final questions besides calibration questions?
We won't go down that path again. I was just curious with this product, does it sample on click or does it sample every 1 second?
You have your choice, either way. And by
Either way.
default, it samples continually.
Okay.
So you do have your choice.
And then a second question, does it identify the interfering sources? Does it have signatures built in so it says it's like a decked phone or a microwave? Does that show up
Not to my
anywhere?
knowledge, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I'll tell you, one of the best things about it, in my opinion, is that the cost is great. The driver support's remarkable, and the support time of these guys is measured in hours or days, not weeks, months, or years, and so or black hole. Having worked with them for about 15 years, I'm a pretty big fan of their products and their company, which is why I agreed to do this at all. I don't do product demos, but I agreed to do this one, and I've got another one, ComView for Wi-Fi, and coming up. What is it, tomorrow? So, I got another question. Okay.
I see you had your buffalo. Were you going to measure a wall, or what was the?
No, I just wanted to. It was a chance for me to stick that in there and make people aware that measuring walls and taking that data and saying this is a such and such wall and it has a 45 dB loss is so the way that works is instead of going, I'm going to save some time, I'm going to do a predictive modeling. Yes, you will, but if it's a whole lot of sites, you can do 7 or 8 schools, normal size schools in a day. I've done that myself, and you're measuring only the abnormal stuff. You go, that's not normal, or that's not normal, but these kind of are normal, and you note the abnormal stuff. You measure that, you say what it is, and you come back and put that into the predictive model. And now, instead of trying to survey 7 or 8 schools in a day, you just run around getting the walls and do predictive, and it makes predictive very accurate in comparison to not doing it. So you need a signal source and you need something to measure with, and there's a variety of things to measure with.
And there's no way to measure it with this product.
You would use, my opinion is you would use something like a ComView for Wi-Fi or something along, or any number of handheld tools, even phones. There's software for Android phones that can, do. In fact, I think, some of the competing guys have stuff like that.
Where I work, we went through the trouble of measuring all of the walls. Not every single one, but every type of wall.
Yeah.
Because I work in a school, which is a relatively new building. Everything inside was done in 2005. But like the band hall has sand-filled cinder block for noise.
Yeah.
And then we have metal stud drywall in the regular classrooms. And if you use some products and you select the preset drywall, you'll get 3 dB. Some of them have a preset metal stud and it'll register as 6 dB. With our measurements, we found that our metal stud drywall are 10 dB loss. And so if you don't measure, you really don't know.
That is absolutely true. And with a walkabout, if you're doing a passive survey, you're already measured, the wall's factored into everything, right? So you don't need that. But when you're doing predictive, if you're just guessworking, you could be off by 3 dB, 10 dB, 20 dB, depending on what's there. The floor plan doesn't show wall lockers and poured concrete, and yet you find it a lot. So that's it. We're done. Thank you for your questions and for coming.